And welcome back to the Sports Zone, talking baseball this week with Gerry Mecca, representing the North Texas Amateur Baseball League. The fields that you do play on, very legitimate, very top-notch, first class. They deserve each and all recognition.
Well, you know, the gentleman you mentioned, Rob, he was involved in the league when it first kicked off, and we played all of our games at Rivershawn Park. But there were only 4 teams, so you're able to do that. Rivershawn is one of the oldest baseball fields. It's the first lighted baseball field in North Texas. It's been around since the 40s. So it's a place a lot of the guys like to go. They kind of call it the temple. So that's in our list. We also play out in McKinney at the Craig Ranch, at the stadium, as well as in the quad. We rent Jesuit Preparatory. We rent John Paul II. We also do a number of high school fields that are of the higher quality fields out there. We carry good insurance. That's important for these schools and for these organizations, because they don't want just a bunch of knuckleheads jumping on the field and leaving beer cans in the dugout. That is not what we are about. And that makes a big difference when it comes to picking who they'll do business with. And so far, they've liked doing business with the North Texas Amateur Baseball League. What
about the managers? How are they selected and all that?
Managers are, they're volunteers. Most of them are former players, or in many respects, they might not play at all. We've had certainly managers just be somebody's dad that wants to still get involved. What we do give them is the ability to play for free if they want to. So they organize their practices, they come to the tryouts, they draft their players, they collect their money in many respects, even though they can do that online on our website. It's really a little bit about herding cats and dealing with players when they, you know, say something off color to an umpire and get suspended.
You mean that happens in baseball?
Yes, that happens. And we have to govern it like Major League Baseball. Yeah. We can't fine them, but we can certainly suspend them for a few games. And we could try to fine them, but they wouldn't pay us. Yeah. But we try to run a good, you know, disciplined organization with real rules and a real league constitution and a real agreement that the player signs, and the managers have some responsibilities too. They can't just show up at the field and leave it to a bunch of crazy kids running around on the field tearing it up. So.
Gerry, what's the cost breakdown?
So let's just say a whole team, which is estimated at 14 ball players, costs $4,200. That's for a 20-game season, and all the teams make the playoffs. So a 20-game season plus however far you go in the playoffs. So the longer you're in a playoff, the more bonus games you get, and then trophies and things of that nature. In the individual sense, some managers don't have the wherewithal or the financial support to get a sponsor. We still take sponsors. We have many of them that sponsor an entire team, and then they just go get some great guys and they put a team together. But if you're self-sponsored, meaning you're just a guy like me and 14 of your buddies and you want to put a team together, everybody ponies up $300 and they play. $15 a game if you want to break it down that way, but we don't let them necessarily do that.
How many practices normally would you have a 20-game season? Yep. How many practices for that week could one expect if you were in a 45 and over league?
Yeah, so I would go ahead and say that it is rare that players have a organized practice once the season starts. Usually practice is heavy during as soon as it gets warm in Texas until the day we open our season. And so the teams rent city parks or wherever they can go, or batting cages. We rent, you know, the dugout. We rent, you know, D-bat. These are great places that the kids use, but they're great for adult baseball as well. And we're all wood bat. One of the biggest differences between MSBL and our flavor of MSBL and other leagues is you're playing with wooden bats. There's none of these home runs with the aluminum bat on a 270-foot fence. What excitement, the truest in a baseball sense would not be really pumped about that trot around the base path, except maybe for their kid, which in that respect I can kind of see.
Now, one of your duties, you handle the AllStar Game. So there is some give back to the community that benefits the Texas Scottish Rite Hospital.
Yeah, every year we pick a charity. Scottish Rite has been one of our favorites. We also give to the Prostate Cancer Foundation because being that Major League Baseball does, and in a partnership with them, we donate money. I mean, it affects men, and obviously there's mostly men, even though I don't think we've ever made a rule that said a lady couldn't play. But yeah, so every year we have an event. We did golf tournaments for years, but last year we were afforded an opportunity to use the Frisco Rough Riders ball field, Dr. Pepper ballpark, and hold 3 All-Star quality games. Actually, it was 2 championship games and an All-Star game, even though that's where our All-Star format is. And teams, basically, if you got voted in, this may sound a little hokey, but if you got voted in, you paid a donation. And if you were a team that was playing, you were expected to make an honorary donation on behalf of your team. We set a goal of $5,000, we raised $13,000, so it wasn't a big deal. And in the end, we sold sweets and T-shirts and you know, it worked out better than I could possibly have imagined. And we'll do that every year. In fact, the Rough Riders have already said they're in again for this year.
That's terrific. You talked about kind of a contract, and there is a code of conduct.
Yes,
so
there
in
is.
essence, when you sign that contract, I mean, you are a legit ball player.
That's correct. You're committed to that team for the whole year. We trade. So if a player is coveted by another, or even we find sometimes the more competitive league finds a guy who's maybe not getting the time he wants to play and he'd like to play at the lesser level. I hate to say it like that, because I'm telling you, these guys put together some baseball teams that are, if you watched it, you wouldn't be saying, well, they're not as competitive, even though it may be obvious in the 35 and 45 ranks. So yeah, it is something that we govern by strict rules, and we've had people play around with them.
So there is some movement. A shortstop here, a right fielder that.
That's maybe even more, you know, romantic than it actually is. It's usually a trade for a guy for a bucket of baseballs, or maybe a friend on one of the other teams has guys that they want to play with, and so they move stuff around. But for the most part, when you sign that contract, you're with that team the whole year. At the end of the year, you're a free agent.
A final break, and back with our remaining moments on the Sports Zone right after this.